Teen Titans is a major pop culture landmark for anyone who grew up in the golden age of action cartoons. The series debuted on Cartoon Network in 2003 and was created by Glenn Murakami alongside David Slack, who wrote many of the episodes, and Sam Register, who worked as a producer at the network. Glenn Murakami was a veteran of DC animation at this point, having worked as an artist on Batman the Animated Series in 1992, an art director on Superman the Animated Series and the New Batman Adventures, and made his way to producer on Batman Beyond in 1999. So he was a rising star on the DC animation team throughout the 90s, and in the early 2000s he got to do his own show based on a DC comic, able to form his own style and aesthetic, as opposed to working with the style of his mentor Bruce Timm, who was one of the main heads of those aforementioned shows. Viewers have been requesting me to cover Teen Titans for years now, and I always said, I don't know, I'll get to it when I feel like it. 5 years of requests later, and now I feel like it. As stated at the beginning, if you grew up in the late 90s or early 2000s and liked action stuff, that pretty much guaranteed you watched Teen Titans at least once. The series, getting over 60 episodes and a TV movie, had a plethora of merchandise and several video game tie-ins. Teen Titans was never my favorite show when I was a kid, but I was certainly a fan of it and had the figures and the games and all that good stuff. I haven't watched all of Teen Titans in well over a decade at this point though, so I was really excited to dive into it. Episode 1, Divide and Conquer, makes it really easy to do so. The show doesn't do an expository opening episode. Instead, it begins with a villain called Cinderblock breaking into jail to release a mutant called Plasmus. The Teen Titans are already fully formed and show up to stop him. The team consists of Robin, Raven, Cyborg, Starfire, and Beast Boy. The original comics lineup of the team was just sidekicks: Robin, Kid Flash, and Aqualad, later introducing Wonder Girl. In 1980, the comic book started including some characters who weren't sidekicks: Raven, Cyborg, Starfire, and Beast Boy. I think these 5 were a good choice for the team since they have different powers that play off each other really well. Robin is the leader and the only one without superpowers, Cyborg is strong and good with machines, Raven has telekinesis and can fly through walls, Starfire is strong, can fly, and shoots laser beams from her hands and eyes. Beast Boy being able to turn into any animal, be it land, sea, or in the air. The opening action scene does a pretty good job demonstrating the abilities each Titan has while they battle against Cinderblock. It was definitely necessary to do so because besides Robin, I'd say most kids watching this in 2003 had never heard of most of these characters before. Unfortunately, I don't think the plot of this episode is that amazing though. The conflict is that Robin and Cyborg fail to execute a combo move, causing Cinderblock to succeed in his goal. Robin and Cyborg argue over it and Cyborg quits the team. Almost the entire second act of the episode is spent on how much Robin actually misses Cyborg, and then the third act is how needed he is in the team in combat. It's not a bad setup, it's just not really that interesting of a story. I mean, Cyborg had all of a minute of screen time before he quit the team, so I feel like the audience hasn't really seen enough of the characters to care about what's going on. However, I still think it's a good first episode. Plot-wise, it's a bit generic and predictable, however, it establishes the Titans' powers well, like I said. And moreover, it shows off the series' style incredibly well. There were a couple of moments where I thought things were looking off-model, but besides those kinds of nitpicks, the animation is great. The fights are fluid and fast-paced, which is exactly what you'd want in an action-heavy series. So the first episode delivers in that promise really well. But in general, I think the art in this show is stellar. Like I mentioned before, the style is very different from any of the Bruce Timm-led DC cartoons. He had a very American art style where men had all these big giant chests and women all kinda had the same body type as well. Teen Titans was designed much differently. According to Glenn Murakami, Sam Register said he wanted something more unique from the style of Teen Titans, and that's how you got the show's mix of US-styled animation with anime elements like the backgrounds and the speed lines during fights or the zanier expressions during dialogue. The show's animation never loses the fluidity during these moments, and I think that's really commendable, and evident from the first episode. The show just has a sick aura to it. Just look at the intro. I'm sure you got a hit of nostalgia just by my playing the opening seconds of it at the start of the video. It just looks so cool as each Titan has their own color and does something cool as they come up in the intro scene. When you watch the first episode, you realize how most, if not every single clip from the intro is just taken from a moment of the first episode, but damn if it doesn't look pretty dope. Even that opening shot of Robin as a silhouette, that's just a PNG of Robin standing there, but framed like that, it's absolute cinema. What's interesting is that Divide and Conquer is pretty clearly the first episode. The Titans do a roll call at the beginning, and Slade is introduced as the villain at the end. However, this was not the first episode that aired. The first episode on TV was episode 3, Final Exam. Airing a show out of order might lead to confusion and other issues with continuity, however, I think Final Exam is a stronger opening episode for the series than Divide and Conquer. The first scene with the Titans here shows how all 5 of them interact with each other as Beast Boy and Cyborg fight over the remote to Raven's annoyance.
Simple, you just get up and change the channel.
Don't even joke like that.
I wasn't joking.
Good, 'cause it wasn't funny!
While Robin tries to settle the dispute.
In the mirror, take it easy, Titans. Combat practice is this afternoon.
I think the episode gives the characters more screen time as they talk at Titan's Tower and attempt to order pizza before getting attacked by the students of the Hive who have been hired by Slade to beat the Titans. This episode also has a part where one of the Titans is off screen because Robin gets separated from the group for the whole second act, but since I thought the episode established him and his role as the team leader better, I think the time without him works better as the other Titans get their butts kicked until he comes back at the third act and they win.
Sorry to interrupt the victory celebration, but like I said, this isn't over.
It's just getting started.
And despite Slade being introduced in episode 1, I think episode 3's Slade intro is also plenty effective.
And the message has been received.
Who is Slade? Who is Slade?
So I honestly think the producers made the right call airing this episode first. With all that talk of establishing these characters, I think now's a good time to get into them more specifically and how their actors brought these characters to life. I don't know about anyone else, but Robin from Teen Titans is pretty easily my favorite incarnation of Robin that I've ever seen. I always liked Robin as a character, unlike some Batman fans who seemingly want him to not be in movies and games and such. But his position as Batman's sidekick made it so that he was never going to be my favorite character since Batman was there. Your mileage may vary on that, since I was always a kid who wanted to be the main character, not the sidekick. But for other kids, Robin was more relatable than Batman, which is why the character was even created at all. Anyway, Robin being the leader of the Teen Titans gives him time to shine and have his own personality. Also, making him the main character made me like him the most in this series. But in the show, he's absolutely badass. I mean, he's got all the fighting skills you'd expect from someone trained by Batman, but alongside that, he's a complete and total menace to society in this. His kicks are powerful enough to send Cinderblock flying, and he can just punch a robot alien and send it stumbling back. All done without any superpowers, not even a second's hesitation over that fact, which makes him a pretty compelling character. And then his cape is made from a material stronger than steel. Robin is normally calm and laid back in this series, but his proficiency in battle makes him a lot of fun to watch. Plus, when he's really determined, he has an angry dark side to him. He feels really fleshed out in this show compared to other cartoon depictions of Robin. He's played by Scott Menville, and he is also my favorite voice of Robin, handling the emotional range I just discussed really well even in Season 1. The casting director, Andrea Romano, a legend in the voiceover world, said it was important to get an actor who could say,
Titans, go!
Without it sounding corny, and they really struck gold with this casting.
One of the things that I think is so cool about Robin is he's the one Titan that doesn't have any superpowers. He's gotten to where he is just through like perseverance and training, and he's this martial arts master.
So Robin was and still is my favorite character on the show for those reasons, but a close second is Raven. That's because while Teen Titans Robin is the kind of character I liked being on the playground as a kid, Raven is a lot more like me, due to her quietness, her manner of speaking, and her frequent use of minimal words.
Is my sister in there? No.
I like how her hood casts a shadow over the upper half of her face, as she just looks really cool and mysterious. And I also really like how her energy powers are colored black. It looks really distinct and pops alongside the purplish blue cloak she wears. And when she morphs from an energy raven into her physical form, I think it looks pretty sick. She doesn't have the most exciting power set, but I always thought it was really cool. Raven is voiced by Tara Strong, who's also pretty well known in the animation industry. The behind-the-scenes clip of each Titan's voice actor demonstrates the collaborative process that can emerge between a great director and the voice talent. Since apparently, it wasn't until Tara Strong was in the final stages of auditioning that Raven's raspy voice was settled on. It's so natural that you'd think it was obvious from the beginning, but good voice acting just has an impact on how the show develops.
And I just started reading her with this, unusual rasp that sort of rotates, as opposed to a boy rasp where, if I'm doing a little boy, he's got a rasp here. She's got like a rolling rasp that's kind of strange and eerie, and that's what booked the part.
Greg Sipes as Beast Boy is another example where he has this youthful, high-pitched voice. And that wasn't what the creators had in mind when envisioning the jokester class clown character, but they were so taken by it that they wrote stuff with Greg's performance in mind that they might never have if he wasn't cast.
When I came into the audition, they had a picture of Beast Boy on the stand, and all of a sudden, I was like, oh, so, Raven, so you want to play some basketball or whatever? It just came out. I never did that voice ever before in my whole life.
The dynamics between the teammates as the show progresses also emerge from the chemistry between the voice actors in the booth. Kari Payton, the voice of Cyborg, said that was a crucial part of how Cyborg and Beast Boy became a comedic duo on the show. Speaking of whom, Cyborg was another one of my favorites. A kid who was once an ordinary guy, but through an accident was turned into a half-man, half-machine with incredible strength. Kari Payton put it best. He's never a character whose emotions aren't on an 11. His energy and enthusiasm, whether sad or angry or happy, makes him a character you always like to see.
There's very few points where Cyborg's just kind of like, how you doing? I'm all right, I'm okay. I could take it, I could leave it. He's either, let's do it! Well, he's like, what are we gonna do, you know?
Also, this is easily my favorite Cyborg design that's ever been made. It being the first one I ever saw certainly helps, but the blue that's added to his design really helps it pop. Every other Cyborg design I've seen is just all silver, so I just think this is a real improvement over that, and gives him a really bold color to have alongside every other character who has their own. I feel like the design would be inferior if he was just all silver, like in Injustice or the Zack Snyderverse, or even the original design.
Give me a booyah out there. I'm gonna say booyah. Booyah! Give me a booyah! I love it.
Hynden Walsh as Starfire is also an endearing character. Starfire is written as a foreign exchange student, as she's from another planet, and so she doesn't really understand a lot of Earth customs. But she has an ever-present eagerness to get involved and experience it, even if it comes off as socially awkward sometimes.
I suggest a large pizza with pickles, bananas, and mint frosting.
Starfire, not everything on the menu is a pizza topping.
Oh.
All 5 characters have great chemistry as a team and in the individual relationships between each character. And something this show excels at is focusing on 5 characters in every episode. That's a pretty big number of main characters for each 22-minute episode. In a show like The New Batman Adventures, where there were 4 teammates, you'd never see all 4 in costume at the same time. Then, on Justice League, all 7 members wouldn't be in an episode unless it was a big event. Teen Titans gives all 5 members a decent amount of screen time in both conversation and action in every episode, but fleshes each member out by making 1 or 2 of them the central focus of an episode. For example, Episode 2 makes Starfire the focus as her sister, Blackfire, arrives to Earth to cause trouble. Not only do many of these episodes make one Titan the focus, but they tell a lot about these characters by putting them in situations that are larger than life, but also relatable to the target audience. For most of this episode, the conflict is that Starfire feels like Blackfire's presence makes her feel invisible, as Blackfire is more socially competent than Starfire and is more aware of Earth customs. So, Starfire feels like everyone will gravitate towards Blackfire more and that she's better off leaving. Robin consistently trying to convince her that this isn't true and backs it up with action when Blackfire tries taking him away from talking to Starfire.
And I am nothing like her.
No, you're not. And I think...
How do I look?
Pink, look, can you give us a minute here?
And when he fights alien robots to save Starfire, since Blackfire was only here to get her sister framed for stealing a gem that Blackfire stole. But you see what I mean, though? In real life, alien robots aren't arresting people. At least, not that I know of. But the conflict at the root of the episode is the sibling rivalry and feelings of inferiority. Similarly, Cyborg gets humanizing episodes centered on him as well. The 5th episode shows how he's in some ways limited by being a robot now, as he runs out of power and needs a new battery, but he keeps trying to fight anyway because he didn't want to not be there while the team was fighting a bad guy. You feel for him and see where he's coming from, not wanting to feel like he's got a weakness or is a liability. And it's also great how the rest of the Titans are more concerned about him being safe than his ability to contribute to a fight. But in turn, that would make him feel like he wants to help out even more. The episode affirming that the human side of Cyborg is what makes him special, not the robotic parts. But that the robotic parts can also be seen as cool too, as a kid with a prosthetic arm tells Cyborg that he's his favorite Titan because he thought they were the same, which Cyborg embraces at the end of the episode. Cyborg also gets a focus episode in Car Trouble, where he develops the very toyetic T-Car, but it gets stolen. Once more, your custom-built car getting hijacked by a super genius isn't something that happens to most of us, but for any person who builds something from scratch, you feel connected to that thing, and someone taking it from you is personal. The episode taps into that for Cyborg, and then also builds a nice bond between him and Raven. She doesn't get the car obsession thing at the beginning, but is a good friend and helps him get it back because it matters to him. And she even helps him build a new one at the end. While I'm talking about Car Trouble, this episode had a couple of things I noticed about it too. First, this was actually the last episode of Season 1 aired, releasing months after the others, but it was produced as the last episode before the two-part finale. Unlike the premiere switch-up, I'm not sure why they did that, but secondly, when the Titans fight Overload at the electronics shop, I noticed something very distinct about the background music. That's the same sample from Death Ruins, a level from Shadow the Hedgehog.
Hey Shadow.
It's literally the same one. And what's funny is that I made the same observation when talking about the Justice League episode Maid of Honor when I covered Season 2 of that show almost 6 years ago, but where does the time go? Anyway, Raven's interactions with many of the other cast members are some of the most interesting ones. Like Episode 7 when she and Starfire switch bodies and have to rescue the boys when they're captured by a puppeteer. Starfire is Raven's polar opposite in every way, as she's loud and emphatic. Forcing them to work together would already be an interesting episode, but then making them have to learn and use each other's powers maximizes that tension. Since having to walk in someone else's shoes is tough, but it can also allow you to get closer to them. Starfire learning that Raven's emotions have to be kept in regulation, not because she's a jerk, but because that's what keeps her powers from destroying things. And Raven seeing that Starfire's powers are fueled by strong emotions. Through this experience, they become genuine friends by the end. This episode gets some flack as the go-to example of a body swap episode that does the thing where Raven's voice comes out of Starfire's body and vice versa. I certainly would have preferred they gone with a version that saw the different actors do impressions of each other instead, but I will give it some points. I like how they animate the two once they've switched. Starfire and Raven's body having super expressive eyes and movement, and the opposite for Raven and Starfire's body. It made up for the vocal element, at least for me. In Episode 6, Beast Boy and Cyborg are given a window into Raven's mind as well, only this time, literally. They get freaked out when Raven loses control of her powers in a fight and investigate her room only to find a portal into her mind. Again, I like how Raven's demeanor isn't just because she's mean. This part in her head shows how she has many sides, like everyone else. She deep down cares about her teammates and actually thinks Beast Boy is funny, and feels a lot of shame for how she acts sometimes and is quite courageous too. These different sides of her are represented by these multicolored Raven avatars. She needs to keep her emotions under wraps though, because her demonic father Trigon will be unleashed if she doesn't. I'm sure that won't be a plotline in 3 seasons' time. But again, emotionally, I found it compelling to have a plot where the closed-off character has a reason for that and thus has difficulty expressing it to the people around her. And these different sides of her all representing all the things she wishes she could say. Larger-than-life story with lots of room for action and explosions, but very personal motivations for the characters. Even the goofy Beast Boy gets an episode devoted to him, like how he's really upset when his attempted prank on Cyborg hits Starfire by accident and takes it really personally. His lesson being that sometimes a joke isn't funny if done at someone else's expense. Contrasted with the villains of the story who think they can use their superpowers to cause untold destruction because they think it's fun. I always thought this episode was kind of boring when I was a kid though. Now I think it's alright, but thing is, Beast Boy was always my least favorite Titan. Every team needs a character like him, so I don't dislike the character, I just relate to him the least, so therefore his episodes don't engage me much. But that's a me thing. They're still good and excel at the same things that the other episodes do, like when the team meets Aqualad in Episode 8. Beast Boy feels good because underwater is his territory since he can turn into sea creatures, but then he feels insecure about his usefulness when Aqualad shows up with much more proficiency underwater than Beast Boy could ever muster, feuding with him for the rest of the episode until they team up and use the villain's insecurity against him. It was in this episode where I realized that the only reason it's one of my least favorite episodes this season is simply because I don't think Beast Boy is that interesting of a character to follow on his own, even if the episode executes well on most everything. Unfortunately, one area where I think the show loses some points is that the villains are pretty hit or miss in this series. When you want to have personal stakes for a hero, giving a villain the same issue from a different perspective can do a lot for a story. Episode 4 does that with Beast Boy fighting Thunder and Lightning, but for many episodes, the villains are mostly background props to fight, like Plasmus or Cinderblock or Overload. Characters who have no character, they're just villains to beat on. Those guys are just monsters, but then villains like Dr. Light or Mumbo Jumbo feel much the same. Them being actual humans gives them more interactions with the Titans, which makes them stand out much more, but still they don't have a lot of depth. A lot of the villains here don't even come from Teen Titans comics, they're fully original characters, but when they do pull a classic villain out, it really works. Episode 10 is about the Titans getting captured by a villain called Mad Mod who seeks to punish them for misbehaving, in reference to them stopping supervillains. So so he tries to re-educate the team by putting them in a school of death. Mad Mod is basically British the character, voiced by Malcolm McDowell, and can warp reality at his own will. This led to many engaging sequences that plays with perspective, giving roughly equal focus to the whole team in this nonsensical chase from room to room. During the main chase montage in the episode, there's this Japanese song playing in the background. The show also wearing its anime influence on its sleeve there. In some of the sillier episodes, the opening theme gets replaced by a Japanese version that was written by the performers of the English version. They said they wanted to do a Japanese version of the intro to get American kids interested in the Japanese language, and the people behind the scenes used it in some of the episodes as a result, which I think is neat. But yeah, Mad Mod is not a deep character, but he's a villain that really holds up as a memorable foe, which is a perfect segue into the series' main antagonist, Slade. Slade was behind the schemes in episodes 1, 3, and 4. Past that point, Robin becomes obsessed with catching Slade. The first sign of that is in episode 9, where Slade needs a computer chip and the Titans try and stop it. It's great that this is a later episode in the season, because by this point, Robin's normal state of being is pretty well established. You know, cool and calm and all that. So that when he gets obsessed with Slade, you can tell how different it is from his normal behavior and why the other Titans get concerned over it. But then this episode goes crazy by having Robin decide to dress up as a criminal called Red X so he can trick Slade into a partnership so he'll reveal all his plans. But also doesn't tell the other Titans about it so they won't hold back while fighting him. Slade saw through the ruse anyway, but even he's like, damn Robin, that's crazy.
How very noble of you. But stealing in order to trap me? That wasn't so noble. Two wrongs don't make a...
Don't ever lecture me. Whatever you're planning, Slade, it's over.
On the contrary, Robin. It's just begun.
The other Titans are rightfully mad at Robin over his methods here, but if I were to give this episode some slight slack, I felt like the other Titans looked kind of incompetent compared to Robin here. In the opening fight especially, they just seem to be pulling punches more than usual. No doubt to highlight Robin as the focus of the episode, but still, these enemies are all robots. I feel like Raven could just pull them apart, or when Starfire gives the robot a warning before blasting it. I guess they didn't know it was a robot until after Robin pulls off the mask, but I'm just saying that the other Titans felt pretty weak here. However, that's pretty small potatoes compared to what makes this episode shine, Slade himself. Every now and again you get an animated villain portrayal that's so great that it becomes one of the most iconic elements of the show. Ron Perlman as Slade was just that. And the thing is, Season 1 Slade isn't even that deep of a character, and he spends most of his screen time in the shadows. However, his voice is so menacing that it carries every scene that he's in. And the writers made the clash between him and Robin so interesting to watch. It all comes to a head in the two-part finale, Apprentice. Slade's plan was to get Robin alone so he could get him to become his apprentice. The whole season was a test to see if Robin was worthy of the role, and everything from his existing combat skills to the Red X scheme convinced Slade that Robin was the perfect candidate. To motivate him, he has the other Titans blasted with parasites that will kill them from the inside if Robin doesn't obey. From the beginning, I thought this episode made the other Titans feel more competent than the last Slade episode. You wouldn't think that at first, because the big action scene at the start of episode 12 is the Titans against a room of Slade bots, and Robin literally just fights them all. The other heroes don't even get to land a single hit. But it's more like that's how consumed Robin is with fury, not that the others suck. Especially once Robin becomes the apprentice, the other Titans have to work without him, showing that they're certainly capable of fighting on their own. And Robin beating them pretty easily also works, since they'd be conflicted about fighting him since they don't know what's going on, so they'd hesitate or hold back. But then he has a reason to fight with everything he's got because Slade will kill them otherwise. So it's compelling drama. Even if Robin is still somehow the most powerful Titan. Legit, Robin just solos Cinderblock and is tossing this megaton monster around. But the episode uses that too to build up Slade. Robin clears Cinderblock like it's nothing, but then he gets his ass beat by Slade, which ought to show you how powerful and skilled Slade is. The highest praise I can give the Season 1 finale is this. Slade tries to turn Robin to his side, and this happens.
Who knows? I might even become like a father to you.
I already have a father.
Batman never appears in Teen Titans, not even once, but I thought that nod was great. Everyone knows who the scene was talking about, it didn't need to have him cameo, since he'd take focus away from Robin. They even have the Robin vs. Titans fight take place in a Wayne Enterprises building, so you're naturally going to think about Batman at least once while watching this episode. However, the season has done such a good job building up the Titans and their dynamics that you don't even care about Batman. You're just focused on the team drama. That's why I talked about how the season made you relate to each Titan and how they relate to each other. It was leading to this finale. Though the fact that Slade had Robin rob a Wayne Enterprises building does get me wondering if that was intentional, like maybe Slade thinks Bruce Wayne is Batman and wants Robin to steal from there to stick it to him. But that's never commented on, so there's no way to know. In the end, Robin attacks himself with the parasite thing and gambles that Slade hates to lose more than anything, and therefore would be losing the perfect apprentice if he let them all die. Slade then turns off the machine and gets away, while the Titans remove all the parasites from their bodies and celebrate a day saved, ending Season 1. Needless to say, it held up pretty well. Like I said, I haven't watched Teen Titans all the way through in definitely over a decade, but upon the rewatch, I thought it was a lot of fun. I didn't think it was perfect, or the greatest show I've ever seen in my life, but it stands the test of time. I feel like it's worthy of its status as what people in the larger culture think of when hearing the words Teen Titans. It had 5 fleshed out characters, some cool villains, excellent animation and action scenes, stellar voice work, and just had its own cool style that stood out from every other action cartoon airing in the mid-2000s. So naturally, it was a big hit. That means there was a lot of merchandise. Like I said at the beginning, I watched this show a lot as a kid, so I had a lot of this stuff. Figures, check. Robin costume, check. Everything you'd expect. There was also this one giant Robin figure that was almost like a foot tall. For the life of me, I can't find any pictures of it online, but it was tall and it would play voice lines if you pressed the chest. It wasn't the image on the screen right now, but it was something along these lines. I bring it up because this Robin figure had like the pointiest nose I'd ever seen, and stepping on it by accident was a scream in agony levels of pain. The regular figures for this series, from what I remember, were kinda lame when it came to articulation, but that was pretty standard for action figures back then. We didn't really care though, it was just cool to have the Teen Titans and various accessories. What was a lot of fun was the games. The show had gotten 3 video games, 2 for the Game Boy Advance, which were your basic side-scroller beat-em-ups, and then on PS2, Xbox, and GameCube, the Teen Titans had a 3D beat-em-up that was fully voiced by the cast of the series. It has that early 2000s tie-in charm where the graphics look like utter dog shit and the models look cursed as hell. But I have a lot of nostalgia for playing this game on the PS2 back in the day. I definitely wouldn't want to play it all the way through today, but playing it for 20 minutes to grab the footage you're watching was a nice trip down memory lane. And I always liked how, despite the really basic combat, the attacks feel pretty cathartic because of the sound effects that play when enemies take damage and die. Which is something I actually claimed in my Sonic Heroes video from 2020 of all places. Things are really coming full circle in today's video. Most of these games released after the show had aired its final episode in 2006, however I bring it up now before Season 2 because, well, first, that's the format I established in my 2000s Turtles retrospective, and second, because it just highlights how popular the show was immediately that it was so merchandised. It's how these boys' action shows got their continued funding. Which is a natural segue into Season 2, where things really take a step up. Season 2 begins with one of the most iconic episodes of the entire series, How Long Is Forever. Starfire wants to celebrate with her friends, but they're all too busy arguing to give her the time of day, telling her that they'll be friends forever so there's nothing to worry about. A battle with a time traveler sends Starfire 20 years into the future where the Titans have grown up and grown apart. Cyborg is an obsolete machine and can't leave the dilapidated Titans Tower, Beast Boy's in a cage at the zoo doing tricks, and Raven is living in a rundown asylum, her mental state having taken a sharp decline from a lack of exposure to other people. Starfire seeing just how horrible it is when a friend group drifts apart. Though one Titan is still doing fine, as Robin is now the solo hero, Nightwing. Fans wondered which of the many Robins was the one leading the Titans in this series, as Season 1 never directly stated it, but the appearance of Nightwing and an Easter egg from a later episode confirms it's Dick Grayson, the original Robin from the comics, and the leader of the Titans from the comics. As always, Nightwing's pretty cool, and looks pretty dope with the long hair and the all-black costume with the blue logo. One of my favorite details in the episode is how Robin/Nightwing never repeats the same mistake twice. He gets his projectile attack blocked as Robin at the start of the episode, but then as Nightwing, his batarangs are designed to counter that attack specifically. Thought that was neat. I will also add on that I think this Nightwing design is a lot better than the one from the DCAU. That looked great too, but this one takes what was cool about that and makes it slightly more practical by giving him a utility belt. The old Titans reunite and help Starfire get home, and the moral of the story being how we shouldn't take the people in our lives for granted. The other Titans working double time to avoid their grim fates by celebrating the friendship event with Starfire. The episode is so fondly remembered because of how it's a fairly visceral take on a grim future. It didn't pull a lot of punches and showed how important Starfire is as the social glue of the team, which in hindsight is great because she never got a season-long arc dedicated to her. So therefore her having the time to shine like this is important. And seeing Nightwing is pretty hype too, as are some of the cameos like the mutant design from The Dark Knight Returns appearing at the circus. In this one episode, I feel like the animation has stepped up in quality. Fights looked sick throughout, visuals looked sharp, and I didn't notice any of the oddities I did in Season 1. For this video, I was watching the Blu-ray release. From this, I learned that Teen Titans was animated in widescreen from start to finish, but broadcast in 4:3 since most people's TVs were like that. The result of this is that you'll notice nothing crucial is ever on the edges of the screen, so that people watching in 4:3 wouldn't miss anything. In Season 1 especially, it does lead to some empty scenes on the edges, but Season 2 is better with all that, so it's an improvement all around. Past that debut episode, Season 2 just continues excelling at what Season 1 did well. You know, making the characters feel relatable despite them being superheroes. Only Human is a pretty standout episode for Cyborg. Like the Season 1 episode, it focuses on his power levels, this time being about how he thinks he can't give more than 100% because he is literally a machine and cannot output beyond that. When, as a human athlete, he was able to push that extra level and always do more, but when a robot called Atlas challenges him to a fight for his friends, he has to find a way to give more and achieves it. Does it literally make sense that he breaks the computer and gives 120%? Maybe not, but I thought it was an emotionally compelling story. Especially once the other heroes are freed and still let Cyborg lay the smackdown upon this guy. Atlas is voiced by Keith David, who has been in a lot of stuff, but I specifically remember his voice from those bumpers from Justice League, you know, those commercials with the sick, eerie aura where he'd go, "We're now back with more Justice League."
We'll return with more Justice League on Cartoon Network.
Anyway, Robin is the star of the episode Winner Takes All, where a bunch of heroes get to battle it out. The episode highlighting Robin's intense competitive side. The story sees Robin, Speedy, and Aqualad on screen for the first time together too, an homage to that being the first Titans comic lineup. Speedy is voiced by Mike Irwin in this, who I recognized because that was the voice of Jack in Jak 2, Jak 3, and Jak X Combat Racing on PS2. His voice for Speedy is probably what Jack would have sounded like if he spoke in the first game, come to think of it.
Robin, likewise. Great to finally meet you.
But I liked this episode because I was thinking while watching it that it seemed like it was spoofing the Teen Titans Flash game on Cartoon Network where you'd battle with the different characters, but then they directly copied the UI of that game later in the episode, so it was definitely a nod to the audience for those of us who remember Teen Titans Battle Blitz. Something I really admire about this season is how it takes teenage storylines you'd see in any other show about that demographic and pumps it up to superhero levels. Season 1, as I said, humanized the Titans to superhero proportions, but this is different. It's specifically focused on the kinds of things that would come up in a friend group of teens, like watching scary movies and one person is more scared than they'd like to admit. In this show, that's Raven in the episode Fear Itself. They start by battling a silly villain called Control Freak at the video rental store, and then they get the scary movie. But Raven is so scared of the movie that her repressed emotions create monsters that pursue the Titans all night long. That was a creative way to do a monsters scary movie episode in an action show. And I always remember the way Beast Boy goes, "The funny guy always goes first," as he's getting dragged off. Another lighthearted episode I loved was Date with Destiny. The villain, Killer Moth, wants to take over the city with his army of moths, but his daughter, Kitten, got broken up with before prom, so she orders the Killer Moth to find her a new date, and so he says Robin must go out with her or else he'll take over the city. There's not much room to do a prom episode on Teen Titans, but they found a way by making the fate of the city hang in the balance. And Robin was really funny in this episode, whether it's lines like this,
Sorry, I don't like you that way. Matter of fact, I just don't like you.
or the fact that he's wearing a clip-on suit over his costume. This episode also being used to further the romantic connection between Starfire and Robin by the end, so it's a worthwhile watch for entertainment and story reasons. But an episode that had me worried at the beginning was Transformation, because within seconds it's clear that it's a pimple-themed episode. I just think a lot of cartoons make them so gross and unwatchable that I was bracing myself for impact. Especially after that sickening Shell Acne episode from the 2012 Ninja Turtles that I covered back in 2023. But this wasn't so bad. They make Starfire's body changes more cartoony than nasty, while reinforcing the message that you'd expect, that these things don't make you ugly or ensure your friends won't like you anymore and all that good stuff. I even really liked the Beast Boy episode, where he feels like nobody wants to hang out with him, and that his attempts to hang out just annoy people, so he wanders off. I'd say most everyone has had a moment like that, but he gets captured by an alien whose green dog escaped. The Titans chasing the dog thinking it's Beast Boy until they try to rescue him at the end. The whole episode showing how they all do love him a lot, but they just weren't available nor in the mood for his antics in that specific moment. The fight between the Titans and the alien who captured Beast Boy was pretty cool to watch, especially so once Beast Boy gets free and lands the final hits and saves the day. Thought that was a simple and well executed episode. And it was also a good omen that I liked the first BB-centric episode this season, because he's the focus titan throughout the major arc this season that begins in episode 3, Terra. This is one of the most iconic arcs from the show, loosely based on one of the most iconic Teen Titans comic stories, the Judas Contract. Terra was a spy sent to infiltrate and kill the Titans on behalf of Deathstroke, aka Slade. In the show, the Titans meet Terra as a drifter with incredible powers over the Earth, but she can't control it. Slade sees her and wants to take her under his wing as a tool for evil, but the Titans want to recruit her as a member of their team. In her debut episode, Beast Boy takes a liking to her, and Cyborg and Starfire also welcome her in, Robin and Raven being slightly more skeptical. But it doesn't matter because Terra makes Beast Boy promise not to tell anyone she can't control her powers, but she thinks he did when Robin comments on it thinking it was obvious, bringing her right to Slade instead.
You lied to me! You lied!
Terra, no! Wait!
Just figured it out. I didn't know it was a secret.
She didn't even say goodbye.
Episode 3 doesn't really have a whole lot going on, it just introduces Terra and her abilities and her relationship with Beast Boy. It's a required viewing for sure, but the arc doesn't really get going until episode 8, Titan Rising. On the rewatch, something I take issue with in this arc is just that Terra doesn't get enough screen time. Titan Rising sees her return to the team with control over her powers, ready to help out, everyone eager to give her a second chance except Raven. The plot of the episode being about how she and Raven come to work together and get along as Terra is turned into an honorary 6th Titan at the end. I say Terra doesn't get enough screen time because this episode brings her back and ends on an ominous note that reveals she's working for Slade. The very next major appearance of Terra is when she betrays the team, so you don't really get the chance as an audience member to even think she wasn't a traitor. But I also understand that having 6 main characters in an episode of TV alongside villains and extras balloons the voiceover budget. In fact, there's an example of this in the season. I'm pretty confident Gizmo is voiced by Tara Strong in episode 9, for example, since this doesn't sound anything like Gizmo's normal voice.
Gee, Scrum Buffer. Sure hope your fancy plan includes getting fried. What's the matter, Robo-Wimp? Afraid I'll kick your stinking can?
Since his role was minor, it was easier to have someone who was already in the booth do the lines instead of paying his normal actor to come in. That's just kind of how it works in the voiceover world, so it probably made sense to keep Tara's appearances to the absolute essentials. Note that my saying that voiceover budgets is the reason Tara doesn't appear more is pure speculation. That's just a possibility. It could just be that they didn't want to include her more often, because 6 characters is more difficult to balance than 5. Ultimately, there could be any number of reasons why that is. I'm just giving one possibility. But in a perfect world, I think Tara could have used more screen time as a teammate to make the betrayal feel more impactful. Tara does cameo at the end of Winner Take All, but if that cameo also extended to the Titans Tower card-playing scene, it would have gone a long way. Also, I have an issue with Titan Rising that really detracted from the viewing experience, and it's definitely a nitpick, but I'm gonna say it anyway, and that's the music. This episode is 22 minutes long, and for most of the second and third acts, the action scenes just play this really repetitive loop. But what was interesting about this super obnoxious loop was that I could have sworn I had heard it somewhere before. And then it hit me. Second episode of Justice League, in Blackest Night, when the team fought the Manhunters. It was just distinct enough to remember, but never bothered me in Justice League because it was only one scene and not several. Makes sense it would be the same music though. Batman Beyond, Justice League, and Teen Titans were all composed by the same trio, Christopher Carter, Lolita Ritmanis, and Michael McQuisition, who all worked alongside Shirley Walker on the music for Batman and Superman the Animated Series as well. Thought that little music nitpick was a good time to bring up the composers, because otherwise I think their work on these shows was pretty great. The Terra arc is at its best in the last 3 episodes of it, Episode 10, Betrayal, and Episodes 12 and 13, Aftershock Parts 1 and 2. There's a lot of emotionally compelling stuff during Episode 10, like how you see Terra really has a good life with the Titans. She gets along with them well and her powers jive with theirs excellently, which is demonstrated in the opening action scene against some Slade bots. But this is the moment Slade decides it's time to set the trap and kill the Titans. But it corresponds with Beast Boy asking her out. She uses this as a chance to get him out of Titan's tower while Slade bots arrive to kill the rest. Beast Boy really getting put through the ringer here. The writer's capturing pretty well how it is when you put yourself out there, maybe look kinda dumb, but also the potential reward being worth it. Until Slade shows up to summon his apprentice. I thought this fight scene was pretty cool, as Beast Boy is fighting Slade like his life depends on it. And I guess it kind of does, but my point is, he's typically the least powerful and least effective combatant of the Titans, but is getting some blows in on Slade, their most powerful enemy up to this point, so it's definitely an interesting scene. Until he learns the truth and that Terra betrayed them from the start. Terra being written as an insecure character with a sympathetic side works pretty well in this show, I'd say. You can see how all she's ever wanted was someone to care about and guide her through her difficult power set. In comes Slade promising all that and validating her like nobody else ever has, twisting her against the Titans. But despite that, she actually came to really like Beast Boy and was hoping he would still be her friend if he knew that she set the rest of the Titans up to be killed. Of course, he's like, hell no. But in her distorted view, he's the one going back on his word by doing that, and thus her bloodlust for the Titans really begins. But again, she's not truly evil, just a really insecure person who's been led astray by a psychopath like Slade. The other Titans survived the onslaught, of course, as the B-plot of the episode was them just fighting robots, and one of my favorite action scenes all season, since they're outnumbered and fighting impossible odds. It's perfect. The cliffhanger ending here is the Titans feeling the weight of the betrayal, but ready for whatever Slade pulls next. If you're binging Season 2, I'd recommend watching Episode 11 before Episode 10. Episode 11 is a goofy episode about a silly Robin with fifth-dimensional powers showing up and causing mayhem by accident. There's not much to say about this episode other than that I thought it was entertaining, especially during the gag where the Titans switch mouths and start talking like each other.
Not a good idea. Mixing my powers with his could destroy the dimension's boundaries and nullify all existence.
Who cares? I just want my mouth back. Well, somebody's gotta clean up this mess. Come on, y'all.
But if you're binging the season, the episode breaks up the weight of the Terra story in a way that's pretty disruptive, so I watched it before Episode 10 so I could go right from that into Aftershock. There isn't even that much story to Aftershock, it's mostly a series of action scenes, but I think that's what makes it one of my favorite episodes of Teen Titans. And it has one of my favorite Raven roasts right at the beginning.
Why did the aardvark cross the road?
To beat up the idiot telling jokes about him.
Terra attacks the Titans and quickly overwhelms them into a retreat. The team's still kind of trying to go easy on her since this is their friend they're fighting. The opening action scene managing to be pretty cool and intense, but also has some funny moments, like when Robin and Cyborg get sent into the sky and fall through a building. But later in the episode, Beast Boy makes some good points in Terra's defense, like how they tried to help Robin when he was working for Slade. But then the rest of the story is Slade dispatching Cinderblock, Overload, and Plasmus to force the Titans out of hiding so Terra can kill them one by one. Like I said, it's pretty clear that these villains are just generic monsters to give the Titans something to fight. In fact, I don't think an episode could make that as clear as this one. They're each a distraction from the real story, but they're all cool fights nevertheless. But anyway, while watching Aftershock, it was pretty clear to me why the Terra arc hits as hard as it does. As I stated earlier, Terra, from a writing perspective, could have used a lot more screen time to build her up. However, there's a reason why this is one of the most well-remembered parts of Teen Titans, an already incredibly well-remembered series. And it's all thanks to the vocal performances. If you were watching this as a kid when it came out, it was pretty dramatic storytelling. Every actor putting their all into the scenes is what makes the emotions resonate and why the arc works so well. You just buy into what each episode is selling, like Raven's outburst at Terra before getting taken down. She tried to project that she never liked Terra, but eventually explodes in anger over being betrayed.
Trusted you. We trusted you. We gave you everything and you treated us like dirt.
It's pretty raw, as is Robin's reaction to thinking Starfire got taken out by Terra. Terra is voiced by Ashley Johnson, whose name would likely be immediately recognized by anyone who's a fan of Ben 10 or The Last of Us. And she was also an extra in The Avengers, but her really good scenes got cut from the movie, sadly, but you can watch them on YouTube. Anyway, I thought her performance on Teen Titans was really good. She was only in it for a couple episodes, but she has a really three-dimensional performance as this misguided villain.
You don't belong with Slade.
You don't know anything about me. I wanted to be this way. I wanted to go with Slade. I wanted to annihilate you and your pathetic friends.
But after all the Titans get beat by Terra, they decide it's time for No More Mercy. Part 2 delivers on that promise because goddamn, they hold nothing back against her here. Terra discovers, unsurprisingly, that Slade is an abusive creep when you get beat by the Titans, and wants Beast Boy to kill her to end it. But he's the one who says that she's got way more agency in all this than she wants to admit.
It's all been your choice. You chose to work for Slade, chose to betray us, and now you've chosen to give him control. Slade isn't doing this, Terra. You are!
Does it make literal sense that she can break free of Slade controlling her nervous system remotely? Not really, but her being able to do that after acknowledging that she's in control of her own actions, not other people, works in a narrative sense, as Tara seemingly sacrifices herself to save the day, also killing Slade too. The Titans remembering her for the heroic act she did at the end, hoping to one day find a way to save her. But in the meantime, that's how Season 2 ends. A total improvement on Season 1. The first season of Teen Titans was pretty darn good and well realized from the start. It wasn't like Justice League, where the first season was pretty damn mid before the peak that was Season 2. I thought Season 1 was good, but Season 2 is just everything that worked well about Season 1, but again, and superior in terms of action and plot lines. It also wasn't perfectly written, but I think it was really strong nevertheless, and didn't have any of those new show wrinkles to iron out, like, actors still getting to grips with their characters in early episodes and such, which is why I think Teen Titans Season 2 is pretty great, and if memory serves, was my favorite season of the show. But the first two are the ones I remember the best, so maybe Season 3 and beyond will surprise me. Thankfully, I can confirm it was better than I feared it might have been. I wasn't expecting it to be bad, I just only remember Season 3 by how the major story arc ends, and that tainted my view of the entire season. But no, Teen Titans Season 3 does all the same stuff the previous ones did, only occasionally better, sometimes just as good, and sometimes not as good. So it's nuanced. The season-long story arc begins in Episode 1, Deception. The Hive has returned, and the Titans are determined to find out what they're up to. In the third episode of Season 1, Slade hired 3 students of the Hive Academy to defeat the Titans, Gizmo, Jinx, and Mammoth. 2 seasons later, I suppose the writers realized that an entire school full of supervillains is an interesting premise for a storyline since it was treated as a background prop in Season 1. Cyborg is tasked with infiltrating the school and finding out what they're up to. The headmaster of the Hive is Brother Blood, who quickly becomes obsessed with Cyborg as he can't find a way to control him. But there'll be time to talk about that later, though. Most of the episode is spent on Cy having to fit in with Jinx and Mammoth and Gizmo, people who are his enemies. But if you spend enough time with people, you might find out they aren't as unlikable or as different from you as you might have thought. Cyborg kind of struggling with that before he's reminded he's on a mission. Plus, he gets to see himself as human again with his disguise. Starfire was sweet in this episode because she says that since she saw the robot version of him first and it's the only one she knows, she doesn't think that makes him a freak at all and prefers him that way. By the end of the episode, Brother Blood is stopped, but he gets away. To be honest, if you were watching this show for the first time, you'd be forgiven for not even realizing this was the beginning of a story arc. Episodes 1, 8, 12, and 13 are the only ones focused on it, which is the least amount of episodes that an arc will have across the entire series. With that big gap between episodes, you might have even forgotten about this one once it comes up again, since it only feels important in retrospect. Before we get into the rest of the arc though, we can look at the other episodes. I'm sure you know the drill by now. The non-story related episodes will focus on a single Titans issue and find a way to humanize them by showing a side of them we haven't seen or develop them further with something we have. Then an episode will be about the Titans as a team, and then the rest will be about the story arc which develops a single Titan more than the rest. For Robin, there's 2 iconic episodes this season. Episode 2, X, brings back the Red X costume from Season 1. Somebody steals the Red X suit and takes on that identity as a thief. What I noticed about this episode is that it has some really fantastic animation. The action scenes have cool camera angles and moments, and tons of expressive facial animations and morphs, and the episode even integrates CGI pretty well. Cartoons were starting to fuse traditional animation elements with CG ones, and some shows made it more elegant than others. This episode, while you can see a CG element just by looking at it, made it look good enough that it's not distracting. Which can't be said for the CG elements in episode 4, but credit to this one. One of the leading mysteries in this episode is, who is the new Red X? But you never learn the answer by the end of the series, but I almost think it doesn't matter. The answer was never going to be as satisfying as going over what a new Red X means for Robin. It brings all the characters and the audience back to a time when Robin was so obsessed with Slade and not in control of his actions that he'd concoct the Red X scheme in the first place. Contrast that with the kind of hero he is in Season 3 and it's night and day. Red X being a selfish foil for this more balanced Robin. But speaking of bringing us back to Slade, while he's not the main villain of Season 3, he gets time to shine in Episode 5, Haunted. Robin is still deep down worried about the return of Slade, but Slade's mask apparently has some kind of hallucinogen dust stored in it because Robin then starts seeing Slade in every dark corner. This bringing back the angry, obsessive side of Robin that hasn't been seen since Season 1.
Slade ran right by you! How could you let him get away?
But, Robin, there was no one there.
It's pretty clear early on that Slade isn't there for the audience since he keeps pulling off impossible moves and can effortlessly stand on shaky ground that crumbles the moment Robin touches it, but for Robin's eyes and nervous system it is real and Slade is kicking his ass. a reminder of just how tough and menacing Slade is.
I've stopped you before!
Robin, if you've stopped me, then why am I still here?
The episode is so iconic because of how brutal it is, since it's basically just Slade beating Robin's ass for 22 minutes. The episode speaking to the trauma Robin has from dealing with this guy, and the ever-present fear that he'll come back. By Robin's own admission, he was always so ready to stop Slade at all times, but now that he's actually gone, it's like he's the only one who's still waiting for that next Slade attack.
There are no generators. There is no Slade.
I know what I saw! I have to stop him. I'm the only one who can. And I'll take down anyone who gets in my way!
But only once Robin accepts that Slade is gone and isn't really there does the fighting end. It's a brutal episode that's remembered well for its intense action, dramatic storyline, and also being the episode where we get to see a window into Robin's past when Raven travels into his mind, giving you even more evidence that this Robin is Dick Grayson if you weren't already convinced, since they show Robin being sworn in at the Batcave and the circus accident that killed his parents. And again, Ron Perlman as Slade is so menacing that it leaves a lasting impression. In an episode where he's not even physically present, he manages to be the scariest villain all season. It's a banger episode, one of the highlights from Season 3. Raven is the focus of Episode 6, Spellbound. This is the one where she gets invested in a book about a wizard fighting a dragon and finds the wizard was cursed into being trapped inside the book. He befriends and validates all of Raven's feelings before it's revealed that the dragon was the one trapped in a book and it was all a lie. The whole point of the story is that Raven feels like a weirdo compared to her friends and wants to be alone as a result, but that her real friends will be there for her, not a stranger telling her things she wants to hear to get what he wants. A nice detail in this episode is how they visually convey how content Raven is when she's becoming friendly with the wizard/dragon. Her hood turns white. Season 1 showed that Raven's various emotions and states of being are represented by the color of her hood. When it's white, she's in an emotionally balanced state, which she became in this episode before resealing the dragon and going back to normal. This is an example of an episode that isn't telling us anything new per se, but it's a good watch and the ending's pretty sweet. Raven is also kind of the star of the episode Bunny Raven, or How to Make a Titanimal Disappear, and yes, that's the name of the episode. I say kind of because Raven's in the title, but it's kind of about all the Titans. Mumbo Jumbo is back and traps the Titans in his hat, turning them all into animals and Beast Boy into a lamp. I think the animal Titans are all really adorable, but the star of the episode is more Mumbo himself, voiced by the excellent Tom Kenny. He played Mumbo before in his debut episode in Season 1, but that episode was grappling with a lot of stuff, so he didn't get the screen time to shine that he gets here, including a full music number and voicing a bunch of different characters, and outsmarting the Titans almost every turn. It's a really good, lighthearted, consequence-free story. Another episode cut from that same cloth is Revolution. The city is celebrating the 4th of July until Mad Mod returns to hypnotize the entire city into thinking that the American Revolution was a hoax, there was no Declaration of Independence, and America is still a series of British colonies. To make matters worse, he captures Robin and swaps ages with him so he can be young again, leaving the other Titans to have to find a way to stop this without Robin's help, only being able to save the day when they compromise in their different ideas. I love everything in this episode, from the way the backgrounds change, to the British flag sky, to Beast Boy having an accent after he's hypnotized.
Oh dear, I'm a Tommy, a Limey, a Brit.
To Beast Boy being terrible at history.
Now I know how George Washington felt when Napoleon beat him at Pearl Harbor.
And Mad Mod is just generally an entertaining villain. It's the total package. Starfire gets some focus episodes in Betrothed and Can I Keep Him? The former of which sees Blackfire return as the ruler of their home planet and is forcing Starfire into marrying an alien slug for the purpose of resolving a conflict. Starfire is selfless enough to do it until Robin exposes it's a fraud and Starfire properly takes her sister to task. In Season 1, I assumed we'd get a cool battle between Starfire and Blackfire, but it was pretty brief and didn't see Starfire really overcome her sister, she just got arrested. So this episode definitely delivered on that, showing a lot of growth for Starfire while once again developing the romantic connection between her and Robin. And Can I Keep Him is kinda what you'd expect from the name. Beast Boy saved one of the creatures from Killer Moth's attack in Season 2 and has kept it as a pet. Starfire is tasked with taking care of it, she grows attached to it, all hell breaks loose until she's allowed to keep it at the end. So you can cross pets off the list of common kid/teen story tropes that are blown up to superhero proportions here. Not that that's a bad thing, it's just that it's exactly what you'd expect from the name of the episode. I think Starfire's connection to Silky is cute, and I thought it was funny when it ate Cyborg's leg, and then bringing back small-time villains for episodes like this is putting old characters and designs to good use, so another good one this was. Though something else I noticed while editing this video was that I was watching in production order, so Can I Keep Him was episode 10, and yet in episodes 5 and episode 3, you can see Silky in the background, so not sure what happened there. Beast Boy's episode in Season 3 was very interesting, since it shows us a new side of him. This try-hard douche is in a robot suit, and BB decides to go beast mode on him after he's sick of being pushed around. The plot is that the chemicals that got on Adonis and BB transformed them both into monsters, but Beast Boy went sicko mode on him before then, and I thought that scene was pretty cool. The plot is a mystery since Raven is attacked by a monster and you don't know what's going on since the Titans conclude it had to have been Beast Boy before they find out that there are 2 monsters. You probably know while watching that there has to be some kind of twist, but the interrogation of and hunt of Beast Boy by Robin, Cyborg, and Starfire is a compelling watch because you don't know what happened. And this goes for every episode, but one thing that really made me chuckle over watching this was how every single person in an action show is made of plastic or something. Beast Boy is just this 500-pound monster now, and Robin's kicks can just send him flying away. That bit of cartoon logic was always funny to me. Like, Batman, for example, is supposed to be the hero with no powers, but the man can just send you flying 5 feet with one punch. Lastly, Cyborg gets an episode where Beast Boy accidentally gives him a virus while trying to pirate a new game early, and it's up to him and Gizmo to save Cyborg while the other Titans try and stop a rampaging Cy from eating the entire city. I already mentioned the CG in this episode, but besides that, wasn't much going on with it, just another funny and lighthearted TT episode that focused on Cyborg that was not related to his arc this season, which we may now get back to talking about. What works well about Cyborg vs. Brother Blood is that it builds off of issues already established in the Cyborg episodes from previous seasons. For example, you might wonder what Cyborg is going to do when Brother Blood tempts him in episode 1 with making him human again. We already know and have seen multiple times how being a robot makes him feel sometimes, so that's a compelling angle the episode doesn't have to spend too much time on setting up because it's already been more than established. But at the same time, Cyborg's computers and systems are a part of him. We saw that in the T-Car episode. It's very personal to him. So Brother Blood then using his blueprints to make weapons of mass destruction would naturally make him really angry. Not to say these episodes don't establish these things, but it's building off of issues set up in previous episodes. Cyborg also taking issue with Robin calling all the shots in this mission so relevant to him specifically. Cyborg is the unofficial second in command on the team. He was always in charge whenever Robin wasn't around, and even said Titans go a few times in the early episodes. And on the subject of early episodes, him quitting the team is the plot of the very first episode because of Robin's attitude. So this resentment feels natural in episode 8, and leads to the season finale where Cyborg sets up Titans East, a team consisting of Bumblebee, Aqualad, Speedy, and Moss and Menos. This gives Cyborg the chance to realize that he can lead his own team and quits Robin's team. It's all really natural, even if you probably know it's going to go back to status quo at some point. In this case, it does because Blood mind controls the Titans East and the other heroes have to save the day. Cyborg giving Bumblebee control of the new team at the end because she's the smartest, most capable, and they have a fun, banterous relationship too. Him realizing he doesn't need to lead to feel valuable or be a real man or whatever because he's perfectly fine and happy where he is. All that's pretty great, however, I did say I remember Season 3 being weaker. After all this praise, I'm sure you're wondering what it could be. It's mostly related to Brother Blood himself. I can see what they were going for here. Slade is the kind of villain who liked operating in the shadows and had a quiet but menacing voice. Blood is the opposite. He's the villain who loves being a loud and passionate villain. He's excellently played by John DiMaggio and has motivations that make sense. He's got mind control powers and is good at reading people and manipulating them. It makes sense that since none of it works on Cyborg, he'd become obsessed with unraveling Cyborg and seeing what it is about him that can defy Blood. I just think that Blood doesn't have any of Slade's menace, something a season-long villain probably should have. He's a good enough foe, but not as memorable as Slade, which is extra highlighted in the one episode Slade was in this season. That's forgivable, but what isn't is the ending. Genuinely, the ending is the reason I remember this season being worse, and it's also one of the only things about this story arc I clearly remembered. Blood is beating Cyborg's ass, and when he's tearing Cy apart trying to hack in, Cyborg hacks back and then has magic powers for a minute, and wins the day out of nowhere.
It's not in the circuitry, is it? It's not the machine that resists you. It's me.
The writers quickly hand-waving that away by saying it was a one-time deal.
Are you like magic now?
Pretty sure that was a one-time deal.
This part was so contrived and out of left field that it was the only thing I really remembered about this story because it left a negative impression on me. Sticking the landing is one of the most important things in a story, which seasons 1 and 2 got right, but 3 ended the conflict with a complete and utter deus ex machina, used on a villain I thought was good enough. But on the rewatch, I think the Brother Blood arc is good. I mean, for most of its 4-episode run, it's doing great work, that can't be forgotten, but endings, if good or bad, they stick with you. And in this case, the ending wasn't great, even if I think the character work up to that point was pretty great. Season 3 in general was pretty strong though. The standalone episodes were all bringing their A-game in comedy and action. The show knows what it wants to be and does it well, which is what you'd hope for when a show has reached this point. I'd probably say it's my least favorite yet, but not because it's not good, just because I like Slade as a villain the most, so him only being in one episode makes me gravitate towards the stories of seasons 1 and 2 more. But this season certainly pulled its own weight, and it also included a part where Cyborg sings the theme song, but only about himself. I thought that was funny and I didn't have anywhere else to work it in, so here you go.
When there's trouble, you know what to do. Call Cyborg, he can shoot a rocket from his shoe, 'cause he's Cyborg.
Season 4 was absolutely stellar. It's easily my favorite of them thus far. Season 1 introduced you to each of the Titans through serious or bizarre storylines. Seasons 2 and 3 continued to allow you to empathize with them by giving them relatable situations. Season 4 definitely does that, but by this point in the series, a lot of the more obvious ideas like a prom episode or a pets episode or a scary movie episode have been taken, so this season really runs wild with the fact that the show has seen some really bizarre stuff happen and comes up with many outrageous premises that fit like a glove in this series. But you kinda get the formula by now, so let's get through it quick. These characters and their world is pretty established, so you can get an episode like Episode 1, where Control Freak gets inside the television and the Titans follow him, while he sicks a bunch of movie villain archetypes on the Titans. It was especially funny when Robin turned to the screen and said, "This episode of Teen Titans was brought to you by today's sponsor," before getting cut off. It was pretty hilarious. Actually, that didn't happen at all. He told you to stop watching the show.
You turn off your television right now!
But funny coincidence, Cyborg then does a sponsorship in episode 9. And speaking of which, this video is brought to you by absolutely nobody. I just wanted to see if I could pull that trick a second time. I also love how at the end of this opening episode, the entire cast debates over the moral of the story before realizing it had none.
It really is bad to watch too much TV.
We only prevailed because Beast Boy watches too much the television.
So there really isn't a lesson here.
It was all completely meaningless.
This episode was a really enjoyable watch. They get almost every kind of TV show parodied in this, from the soap opera to the cooking show, and even do a cinematic aspect ratio when they're in the Star Wars parody. From there, the season doesn't let up in entertainment. Episode 2, The Quest, is an iconic one where Robin travels east to train with the Ultimate Warrior, along the way having to face many trials. It's doing the whole Empire Strikes Back thing where the first unassuming person Robin meets actually is the Master Ninja, and his putting up with the tests was part of the training. But what makes this episode so fondly remembered is the B-plot where the other Titans raid his closet and all decide to wear his costume and goof off with his weapons. Because he has a closet full of identical costumes, naturally.
You know, Robbins, the mask makes me feel cool too.
As enjoyable as that was, the A-plot provided a lot of cool action set pieces and artwork, so it's a memorable episode from top to bottom. The episode Employee of the Month pays off Beast Boy having been a vegetarian for the whole series and his ongoing want for a moped by forcing him to work at a meat restaurant to win a company moped. Only for him to discover that this is an evil plot by a tofu-looking alien called New Fu that's trying to control us all with their fake meat products. This is what I was just saying a moment ago. By season 4, Teen Titans has just earned the ability to do the most random stuff and you probably won't even blink an eye at it. But in a good, funny way. New Fu is voiced by Rob Paulsen, and the utter absurdity of the situation and his vocal performance was really entertaining to watch.
Submit to my greatness, and I might just spare your pathetic... what is this?
Lunch.
Another totally wacky episode that occurs with no shame is the iconic Mother May I episode, where the Titans are brainwashed by a pie into thinking that this witch is their mother as she takes over Titan's tower and plans to bake the Titans in a giant pie. But Starfire is immune to its effects because she had 9 stomachs. I'd say it's iconic because, like I said, the show is pretty shameless, in a good way, with utterly insane premises like this. Fighting gingerbread men doesn't feel that out of place in this show that has both serious and silly episodes alike. And then it's funny how the Titans try to battle criminals in these silly outfits that Mother May I put them in. It's an entertaining and lighthearted episode. Not much more to it than that. Cyborg gets his time to shine in 2 episodes. One of them had me scared at first. The premise is Cyborg getting blasted thousands of years into the past and having to fight despite not having the electricity to power himself readily available. I say scared because Cyborg the Barbarian doesn't really sound like the most interesting of premises to me, but I think it explored areas of his character that made it a worthwhile watch. For example, his ingenuity. It's not the most effective, but he does try to generate electricity in this primitive time by using what he knows about how to create it, despite electricity not being invented for a long time after this. And then you have Cyborg getting romantic with the leader of this tribe. He had some banter with Bumblebee in Season 3, but they didn't explore it much. He's just a really loyal and devoted guy, so his becoming wrapped up in helping these people with their conflict makes a lot of sense because that's who he is. Sending him so far away from his home and timeline really helped paint that picture about the character. I also liked how he doesn't get the heroic moment at the end, because he's about to use up all his power to save the day, but Raven found a way to pull him back. But she shows him that the history books say his new friends won the day. It was a really well done episode and showing an emotional side to Cyborg, and casually giving us a sweet moment between Cyborg and Raven. The other Cyborg episode is a little more by the books. He realizes he can't achieve everything he wants to in a day and installs a new processor to triple his productivity. The ultimate moral of the story being that rest time and not achieving absolutely everything in a day isn't the end of the world, especially if you don't read the instructions for your new brain processor.
We're actually reading the instructions.
Starfire's episodes are all pretty iconic as well. In Stranded, Robin gets upset when Cyborg calls Starfire his girlfriend, which makes her upset about the nature of her relationship with him. And I like how this episode plays with your expectations, since you quickly start to think that Starfire, like usual, is not picking up on the nature of the English language and questioning if he's saying she's not a girl and not his friend. Robin kinda tries using that language barrier as his get-out-of-jail-free card, but you later learn that she knows exactly what a girlfriend is and that she takes it as the ultimate rejection. Her powers also don't work because, as established earlier in the series, her powers need strong emotions to function, and confusion clouds her abilities. Robin having to be honest is the only way to get them back. I thought that was all well-written stuff in the A-plot, and the B-plot had funny moments as well. So it was a winning episode. But one of the most memorable Starfire episodes in the whole show is Episode 6, Troc. The team meets a superhero from off-world called Valyor who needs their help defeating evil robots. He quickly comes to value Robin, Raven, Cyborg, and Beast Boy, but cannot give Starfire the time of day and criticizes her every move because she's a Tamaranian, a species he has a prejudice against. He calls her a Troc, which means she's worthless. I think this guy is a really interesting portrayal of a racist. It can be easy and also valid to write them as unlikable or ugly or stupid, but making Valyor competent and showing him as nice, likable, and charismatic to the rest of the team was a good move. It shows how these kinds of people exist. Those who have good qualities, which makes their ugly or unacceptable ones that they keep hidden all the more interesting, since you don't usually expect that from this kind of character. Since the other teammates are from Earth, they don't know what a Troc is until Starfire tells them. Despite liking him before this, they immediately back their friend up without a second's hesitation, which is also really great character work since the bonds between these teammates is that solid by this point. Robin telling him to just go when he tries to do his half-hearted apology.
Spike, you understand. I didn't mean anything by it, it's just...
Valyor, I think it's time for you to go.
Also ending on the note where Valyor learns nothing from this. He tries saying Starfire is one of the good ones when she saves the day, but that's the only takeaway he has. And that also is a thing that happens, because some people's minds will not be changed, no matter what happens. It was just a really great portrayal of racism by the standards of Cartoon Network, even getting in this iconic funny moment between Starfire and Cyborg.
So he's calling you a terrible name. And you know that if you punch him out, it'll just confirm all the bad stuff he thinks about you.
You know what it feels like to be judged simply because of how you look?
Of course I do. I'm part robot.
All in all, Season 4's non-story related episodes are all fantastic. The show more than knows what it wants to be and is just firing on all cylinders at this point, which is great because the season's story arc is also doing that. This time we got a season about Raven. Right off the bat, Dr. Light returns and you get a call back to how his encounter with Raven went in Season 1.
Remember me?
I'd like to go to jail now, please.
That was funny on its own, but it was an episode worth calling back to since that was the one where Beast Boy and Cyborg went inside Raven's mind and saw her father, Trigon. The show is ready to cash that check it wrote back in Season 1 because Trigon is ready to be unleashed. It's Raven's birthday in Episode 3 and she doesn't want to celebrate in the least bit. Robin being the most understanding of her and even mentions that they have a bond since that time Raven went inside his mind in the last season. Another relevant callback because Slade has returned from the dead, for real this time.
I don't know where you've been, but you shouldn't have come back. I'm still ready.
That's precious, Robin, but I didn't come back for you.
In some shows, the villain from an early season coming back all the time might get boring, but the show manages to keep it fresh, first because he's just an entertaining bad guy, but also because he's back with demonic superpowers and is pretty much invulnerable.
Whoa, that's it? No clever comment?
And I love how cool Robin is in these episodes. He's really mastered his fear of Slade. In Season 4, he's still devoted to stopping him throughout, but that's because this revived Slade is the biggest threat they've faced thus far, not because he's personally obsessed like he used to be. Slade's true target in this episode is Raven. We later learn that Slade was revived by Trigon to deliver a message to Raven that the time to fulfill her purpose is soon going to arrive. In return, Trigon will give Slade his flesh and blood back, since he did actually die in Season 2. A job Slade is happy to fulfill since he means he just gets to beat up the Teen Titans with superpowers. He also gets to be a supreme creep during this episode too. A role he also seemingly enjoys too as he chases Raven across town to deliver the message. This episode casually demonstrating just how powerful Raven is since she has the ability to stop time if she wants to, and only Slade can counteract it. I also like how she breaks Robin out of being frozen in time to help her when Slade is still after her. He's the one with no superpowers, but he's just that guy you want around in a tough situation, which is Robin and Raven's whole dynamic throughout the entire arc, which continues in episode 7 since Slade leaves the Titans alone for now at the end of the 3rd episode. The closer the Titans get to the bottom of this, the less Raven wants to be involved, even leaving the team behind when they reach the basement of this old town library. They think Slade needs a gem to bring Trigon back, not knowing that Raven is the gem. Raven was created and sent to this Earth to provide Trigon a portal to come through and rule over the Earth. The stakes are at world-ending heights now as the Titans continue to fight an impossible battle. I love the way Slade moves in his new form. He walks around like a zombie and dodges attacks in this way that looks super unnatural, but intentionally so. But after 2 episodes of him being completely unstoppable, the scene where Raven comes back to beat him was great. He just goes through the ground and then Raven pulls him back up, and the look of terror on Slade's face was surprisingly satisfying as a viewer as she promptly kicks his ass. Before he gets away, returning in the 3-part season finale, The End. Which is actually the only 3-part episode in the entire series, so you know it's when all hands are on deck to produce something great. In Part 1, it's a normal day fighting Plasmus until Slade attacks, but this opening action scene got me thinking, remember in Season 2 when Slade fused Plasmus, Overload, and Cinderblock into one giant monster? It's weird how that happened, but then Cinderblock and Plasmus just go back to being their regular boss monster selves later on. Most of the episode is spent on the Titans trying to fight against Slade and his army, to no avail when they come for Raven. But you get a lot of sick moments in the process, like Beast Boy turning into that monster form he had in Season 3, or Cyborg plugging into the tower to unleash a huge laser beam. But eventually, Raven surrenders and does her part to help Trigon come to Earth. And of course, he betrays Slade, leading to Part 2 where the Titans learn that Raven left them a fraction of her power to fight against her father. Trigon is the ultimate evil villain. He's just a character with no depth in sight, but he's the kind of villain that makes that work. He's pure evil incarnate, excellently voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson. Slade reveals that Raven is still alive, so he and Robin go look for her. Really, it's so that Slade can get his body back and that Robin can find Raven, but before I get to that, the rest of the Titans have to distract Trigon until he makes them fight their shadow selves. The action in this is pretty good, though the other Titans battling their own demons literally is a bit on the nose, especially since the shadow clones start picking at the hero's insecurities. I'm just saying that narratively speaking, this part is fine, but the least interesting plotline of the episode. But the resolution of, to heck with it, let's just kick each other's butts instead, was pretty entertaining.
Told you I could kick your butt.
The highlight of Part 2 is Robin teaming up with Slade. The writers skillfully mined all the drama they could from this situation. Robin willing to work with Slade of all people because he's just that devoted to getting Raven back and saving the world, while also not letting Slade remotely justify his actions.
So why did you do it? For money? Status?
Not everything is so cut and dry, Robin.
Selling out our world for your own personal gain seems pretty cut and dry to me.
Not that Slade even wants to.
And just like everything else you've ever done, it's made people suffer.
It's what I do best.
But their team up is cool to watch because they're the best fighters in the show and they're just tearing through demons like it's nothing. It once again makes Slade feel like a twisted reflection of Batman here, as Robin works really well with him, but Slade is an evil psychopath. In Part 3, Raven is now in child form and Robin has to protect her and restore her confidence, leading to the finale where the whole team is battling against Trigon one more time and even work alongside Slade again to start damaging him. Which is the thing that gives Raven her confidence back as she unleashes the power needed to send Trigon back to Hell and restore the world the way it was. That's a pretty brief outline of Part 3, but it's just an action spectacle and it works really well. Raven unleashing a crazy amount of power at the end doesn't feel contrived since the whole season, really the whole show, is built up that she's super powerful but has to keep a lot of that contained. Something that she doesn't have to do anymore since she's accepted that her destiny isn't and never was set in stone, which is why she breaks away from her intended purpose and destroys her father. It's great stuff. I think this originally was the ending of the series. Apparently 4 seasons were planned, but the show's popularity got a 5th one ordered by the network. Looking at it from that lens, I think this was a pretty cool ending. Like I said, the stakes were never higher than Season 4, so it would make sense if they wanted this to be the end, but it wasn't. Either way, Season 4 was absolutely the best one, which again, I wasn't expecting since I have the most nostalgia for the first 2, but this one just nailed everything from start to finish. Season 5 of Teen Titans is commonly considered the weakest one. And watching it again now, that's definitely the camp I sit in. I didn't have low expectations since the show has been so consistently good and hasn't had a single bad episode in its entire run thus far. However, I do remember this one feeling pretty dry to watch. So I wasn't exactly hyped to watch it either, since the stakes of the series peaked at Season 4, that much I remembered. What's unique about Season 5 is that it's formatted differently from the previous 4. The formula where over half the season was just about the characters with no connection to an ongoing arc, and then 4 to 5 episodes that would be the main story. This season is different because there are 13 episodes like usual, but only 2 of them are not related to the arc. That sounds like it could be cool, but sadly I think this is the least interesting arc in the entire show. The plot begins in the 2-part opening, Homecoming, where we see a younger Beast Boy working with his team, the Doom Patrol. The team fights against the Brain, the leader of the Brotherhood of Evil. In this flashback, you see Beast Boy is treated pretty harshly by Mento, the leader of the Doom Patrol. Contrasted with how the Teen Titans operate in the present day as the heroes save the Doom Patrol from the Brotherhood of Evil and are made aware of the Brain and his evil schemes. This was a good opening episode, giving the audience a window into Beast Boy's past and seeing how he's changed when he's able to confront Mento's attitude later on. And I thought this team-up moment was cool. It felt like it was straight out of a comic book page.
Titans!
Doom Patrol, attack!
But then I thought it was weird how the Brotherhood of Evil is the main villain for Season 5, but then their sights are set only on the Teen Titans. The Doom Patrol don't return to help out at all. But anyway, the main plot of the season is that the Titans are going all over the world to recruit a big team to fight against the Brotherhood, bringing back old allies and forging new ones before the big battle at the end of the season. The issue is, that's not a bad storyline to have for a season. It makes every episode important to the story while also allowing each one to focus on some new hero and villain. But it's also not the most interesting or personal. I mean, Robin vs. Slade in Season 1, Beast Boy and Terra in Season 2, Cyborg vs. Brother Blood, Raven vs. Trigon, these were all personal stories for each of those Titans. Season 5 doesn't really have that for most of the run. The opening episodes show Beast Boy's past, and the finale forces him to lead the team when most of the heroes are captured, which was interesting to watch, but for the rest of the episodes in between, the stakes don't feel that high and the drama doesn't feel that personal. You just watch the Titans build up their network one episode at a time, and you get a big fight at the end. To compare, when Justice League turned into Justice League Unlimited, they smartly skipped the part where the heroes are recruited and go to the final product, and built a whole series out of new character interactions and drama. On that note, this season kind of feels like a backdoor pilot or a sales pitch for how the series could continue with new characters, but it didn't pan out because the show didn't continue past this point. Once again, this isn't me saying Season 5 is bad, I don't think it is. It's plenty entertaining as an action comedy show, and if you watched the previous seasons, there's no reason why you'd skip the final one in a binge, because it's still good. I just think the show was clearly winding down in this season, and it kinda shows because I don't think the plot was nearly as strong as it was in the last 4 seasons. There were many episodes I really liked here, though. Such as Episode 7, Hide and Seek, where Raven is forced to transport these children with superpowers, and it goes about as well as you'd think. I thought this one was really funny because Raven trying to interact with these toddlers just reminded me of my first time babysitting my cousins. Like, Beast Boy tells her to tell a joke, and when he tells it, it's really funny and charming and well-timed, but when she does it, it goes like this.
So, you wanna know why the cookie went to the doctor? It felt crummy.
But Raven grows attached to them and saves them from the villains at the end. It was a sweet episode. Episode 6 makes Dr. Light a serious enemy in combat for once. I thought this was amusing because the episode even pokes fun of the fact that this guy has been nothing but a cold, open villain thus far.
Don't we normally beat his butt by now?
He's still treated as an idiot, but just gets more powers to fight with in this one. Also, now that I'm talking about him, I wanted to say that Dr. Light is voiced by Roger Bumpus, aka the voice of Squidward Tentacles, and that makes all his lines way funnier. Clancy Brown, aka Mr. Krabs, was also the voice of the villain in the Aqualad debut episode from Season 1, and I already said that Tom Kenny played Mumbo, so most of the main cast of SpongeBob was in this series. And then, I liked the episode where the Titans East show up to protect the main city while the Titans are away. It gave them some more screen time to shine, and also pitted them against Control Freak, who's a fun villain to watch. Especially when he uses his remote to force Mas and Menos to speak English. I thought he was just gonna turn the subtitles on for them, but them magically speaking English made me chuckle. All of the things I like about Season 5, it's just the show succeeding at what it's already done well. My only issue is that I don't think it's doing anything new or exciting with that. And then you have episodes like the third one, which are pretty boring. It was a must-watch because Madame Rouge from the Brotherhood of Evil attacks Hotspot and captures him, allowing the Brotherhood to monitor the Titans' communications for the rest of the season, but it was so dull because it was a villain you don't know anything about, chasing down a hero you don't know anything about, and fighting each other until Robin shows up and gets tricked into giving his communicator away. I didn't really care for that episode. But at its best, I think this arc of episodes is fine. At its worst, I think it can get dry and a little boring. The resolution is also fine. The big battle scene between all these heroes and virtually every single villain the show has ever had thus far was pretty cool to watch, though, with how voiceover budgets go, none of the returning villains get speaking roles, which is part of the fun of seeing them at all. It is satisfying to see Beast Boy and Robin take down the Brain and his gorilla sidekick, but as established, I didn't really feel much of anything while watching because the stakes don't feel as high or personal. Plus, I think it was strange to give Beast Boy the semi-spotlight again. Season 1 was for Robin, Season 3 was for Cyborg, 4 was for Raven, and Beast Boy got the spotlight in both Seasons 2 and 5. Sure, he was sharing the spotlight with Terra in Season 2, but it was still all about Beast Boy at the end of the day. Starfire just doesn't get a season-long arc. That would have been nice to see and be a little more balanced than Beast Boy getting 2 seasons, however there is one episode in Season 5 that was really good that actually made me not mind that Starfire didn't get a season. Episode 10, Go, comes right before the episodes where the Titans beat the Brotherhood of Evil, and it was a pretty cool story idea. Go shows off the origins of the Teen Titans. Starfire is imprisoned by the Gordanians and escapes to Earth and gets into a fight with Robin, who just moved here. Cyborg, Raven, and Beast Boy getting in on the fight until they realize Starfire is friendly. The team fighting off the Gordanians and saving the Earth.
I'm only gonna say this once. Booyah!
I thought that not showing the origin of the team in Season 1 was an inspired choice. It didn't really matter how the team came to be at that point. What mattered was showing who they were as people and friends. Putting the origin story at the end allows you to reflect on the story getting to this point. The episode does a great job making the Titans really awkward when interacting with each other, which is typical for a new friend group forming. The episode ties into each Titan's character arc really well. Cyborg, for example, has spent the whole show grappling with his humanity. It's only natural that in this prequel episode he doesn't show his face fully and hides his robotics because he thinks he's a freak before meeting people who don't mind and think it's great. Robin's speech at the end of Season 4 about Raven daring to hope she could be a hero is what you'd think of when watching this episode where you see her make that conscious choice for the first time.
I'm not the hero type. Trust me. If you knew what I really am, you wouldn't want me around.
I know enough.
For Starfire, this episode got me thinking it was fine she didn't have a whole arc, and while it would have been cool, but if you just focus on the Starfire episode throughout the whole series, you see that she does have an arc spaced across the show. She was once really insecure about fitting in and understanding people, but she bested her sister twice, she accepted how important she was to her friends when she sees what happens to them without her, she stands up for herself in her relationship with Robin, and she sees how much her team has her back when confronted with a racist. All these episodes made Starfire from Season 1 and Season 5 two different people. An episode like Go allows you to appreciate that before you see the Titans defeat the Brotherhood of Evil in the following 2 episodes. But those aren't the final episodes. The last episode is Episode 13, Things Change. It's pretty much what the whole video was building up to, because this is a pretty infamous episode in the animation community. The final note of Teen Titans has nothing to do with the story of this season. Instead, the Titans have returned to their city after going global against the Brotherhood of Evil and find that the city isn't how they remember it. Stores that used to be opened are now closed, but what remains the same is that there's some crazy monster to fight. But in the battle, Beast Boy spots a girl that looks just like Terra and ditches the team to get to the bottom of it. What makes this an infamous episode is the ending. Beast Boy gets to talking with this Terra look and sound alike because he finds the statue she was left as in Season 1 is gone, but this girl claims she's not Terra and has no idea who that is or who the Titans are. Beast Boy is desperate to get her to remember him and their friendship and get her back, but she's clearly not interested in that and encourages him to just go back to his friends, because she's just a girl with a math test next period and nothing more. Which is the note the show ends on. Obviously, there's no Season 6, so people have spent a long time wondering what was going to happen next after this alleged cliffhanger. Said cliffhanger is why people don't like this episode, but I have a different take. On the one hand, I don't think the episode is amazing. The plot kind of comes out of nowhere if you watch the season, and it's not that interesting in the moment-to-moment scenes if you've already seen it before, but conceptually, I think this is a fantastic ending. It's not a satisfying ending, but it's a pretty thought-provoking one by the standards of Teen Titans. It's pretty much all but confirmed that this was Terra. The statue is gone, after all. But does Terra really not remember who she was, or is she just saying that? The episode leaves it pretty ambiguous. Her getting mad when Beast Boy throws mud at her face would lead you to believe she genuinely doesn't remember anything about their dynamic, but there's also plenty of reason to believe that Terra really just doesn't want to remember and doesn't want to be found. Beast Boy remembers her fondly, sure, and has held her fate against himself ever since and sees this as a chance to fix it. But if you consider it from Terra's perspective, it's much different. Before she met the Titans, she was miserable and afraid because of her powers she couldn't control, which led her into the arms of a psychopath like Slade. And she did horrible things in his name. She now has a second chance at life and actually looks happy for a change. Her entire experience with the Titans, if she does remember it, is probably the darkest chapter of her entire life, even if it had some good moments. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if she's faking amnesia or not, because that's not the real point of the episode. The title, Things Change, is truly in reference to the fact that one of life's many lessons is that all things come to an end. People and places change. People you thought you were best friends with change. Learning to let go and embrace what you do have and embrace change is one of the most crucial lessons a teen learns before becoming an adult. If you don't believe me, listen to the voice of Cyborg explain it. By the time Season 5 was in active production, they knew they didn't get picked up for Season 6, so they wanted to think up what the best final lesson would be.
We wanted to do a Season 6. We wanted to explore, Starfire's kind of personal journey, kind of the way that everybody else had, but it wasn't in the cards for us. And so we thought to ourselves, what is a teenager's last lesson? This is Teen Titans. This is the end of the road. This is kind of graduation in a way. So what is the last thing that we all learn as teenagers? And we're thinking about high school, and you graduate, and they're friends that you had all your life, and you become very close to, and then for whatever reason, the relationship doesn't go the way that you think, and you never see these people. There's somebody that you thought that you'd be friends forever, and you never see them again. And maybe there was something that there was some closure that you wanted, but you know what? Life doesn't work that way. Once you become an adult, life doesn't work that way. And sometimes you just gotta learn to move on.
You've gotta learn to move on. Embrace those around you who are there. And remember what good came of those who aren't, and move on. That's the point. That's what Beast Boy accepts at the end of the episode. He's never going to learn what happened to Terra, and it's a waste of time trying to find out while Robin, Raven, Cyborg, and Starfire need his help. That's his real family. Those are the important people for him. And that's what the whole show was about. I think this is a good note for the series to end on because letting go is a valuable skill. I got sad when this episode ended this time because I'm gonna miss Teen Titans. I've been working on this video for a month. So this show and its characters and my thoughts on them and how I was gonna present those thoughts to you in the audience have been on my mind regularly for an entire month. I'm sad it's over, but when you take a step back, you see how we in the audience saw almost everything there was to see in this show. The series had such an interesting journey for its main characters that was unforgettable. We saw them all grow over these 5 seasons. We saw how they started in the episode Go, and we realized in the finale that there's always going to be some monster for the Teen Titans to battle, but they've learned the lessons they needed to learn, and that's when the show ends. We, as the audience, saw what we needed to see, and it's time to let go and move on. I think that's a great ending. When I was a kid and a preteen, I probably thought to myself that it's BS that the Teen Titans cliffhanger didn't get a follow-up. But now that I'm an adult, I see that it wasn't a cliffhanger, it was just an open ending. Sounds kinda like Sly 3, which I've talked about a dozen times before. But this, of course, wasn't the last we ever saw of these Titans. A few months after the airing of the final episode, Teen Titans Trouble in Tokyo was released, an hour-long movie. To be honest, I never really liked it that much. It's okay, it's got good action, and it has all the same appeal as the series, however, I just always thought the plot was really boring. But it does remind you of just how much of a fucking menace Robin is in this show. Like, look at this clip. Like, geez, Batman, what kind of steroids did you feed this kid? And it also shows that the Titans are able to hold criminals for interrogation at Titan's Tower, which seems highly illegal, but that's just me. Lastly, the movie makes Starfire and Robin's relationship official, so if Things Change wasn't a satisfying enough ending, Trouble in Tokyo does give the characters a more definitive send-off. But that's all I really have to say on that. It was clear in 2006 that Cartoon Network was going in a slightly new direction. Teen Titans and Justice League Unlimited were both ending. Ben 10 premiered in very late 2005 and absolutely blew up in 2006. It was an original toyetic franchise and they were looking to capitalize on it. DC cartoons still existed on Cartoon Network afterwards, but Ben 10 became their big action franchise over things like Teen Titans or Justice League. In 2013, Teen Titans Go premiered on Cartoon Network, a comedic spoof of the original show with the same voice actors. I don't want to talk about it too much, since I don't want the video to be too long, but what is sad is just how for many years, fans of the OG Titans show were really angry and vitriolic about Teen Titans Go. Now, I never really watched any of this series. Some of the clips I've seen have been really funny and others have been really odd and make me want to turn away. I'm just not interested one way or another, which is what anyone who doesn't like it should do. At this point, Teen Titans Go has been running far longer than the OG ever did, and is now older than the OG was when Teen Titans Go came out. In fact, we're so old now that we're witnessing the moment where people start talking about how much better Teen Titans Go Season 1 is compared to the newer episodes. When I was there for when that stuff was the ruiner of all childhoods. That ought to make everyone feel old, but the point is, it exists. It can be criticized. That's perfectly valid, I suppose, but it's not taking Season 6 away from you, it's just the cast taking the piss and having a blast with it, as they say. Which is fine by me, I'm not the target audience. I haven't watched Cartoon Network in like 13 years. You can miss the OG Titans all you want, but the lesson of that final episode is that it's okay to just move on and enjoy it for what it was. Now, in the current media landscape, anything is possible. X-Men 97 is proof of that. The recent Batman Caped Crusaders show was originally pitched to Bruce Timm as a revival of Batman the Animated Series before he countered with a new idea. So, for that reason, it's totally possible that Teen Titans could return in a new series or season. I'd even watch it. But I'm happy we got the show we got when we got it. That's all that matters to me, and I feel like that's all that should matter to the fans of the show as well, which I think is an appropriate spot to end the video on. I had a lot of fun making this video, and I hope the people who spent 5 years waiting for me to return to DC animation videos got something they enjoyed. I know it's not the same, but frankly, I'm not the 5-hour analysis guy anymore. That was over half a decade ago. My life and personality is nothing like it was then, and I don't really want to make anything like that ever again. This is the kind of video I'd rather do, so I hope people enjoyed it as much as I did. But either way, I'll finish it off by saying what I always do. If you made it this far into the video, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.